me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oops. All right.
Yeah.
Mr. Bartlett.
Here.
Mrs. Brown Knight.
Here.
Ms. Gelbaugh.
Here.
Dr. Lewis.
I wasn't.
What?
Just here. Here.
Yeah.
Joni, strike that.
Mrs.
It was a
Rankin.
joke.
I'm here.
Mr. York.
Here.
All right. All right, let's start with the minutes from last time. Any question regarding the minutes? No? Minutes? No? All right, a motion, please. A motion and a second to accept the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Bartlett.
Aye.
Mrs. Brown Knight.
Aye.
Ms. Gelbaugh.
Aye.
Dr. Lewis.
Aye.
Mrs. Rankin.
Aye.
Mr. York.
Aye.
All right, we'll accept those minutes. All right, in communications, we have the report from Police Chief Hines. We have Officer Pitsley in the back.
I mean, Lieutenant Presley.
I mean Lieutenant, sorry, yes, Lieutenant.
Whoa.
Didn't mean to give you demotion.
All right.
Any comments about it? Everything, any questions? Any questions to Lieutenant? To the Lieutenant? No?
So you had some truck violations. What is this seems like there's a lot of trucks, more trucks coming through. Is that just me?
Much more closed.
So it says, road use and weight. What is, as far as road use, what is that?
I'm sorry?
What, road use and weight?
Well, a truck can be overweight, you know,
Right.
and they can stop and weigh it, or they may be, you know, like if there's a weight limit on a road or a bridge and the truck is on, I'm assuming it's something like that.
Much more closed.
But was it at one time that through trucks were prohibited?
Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah.
We're not doing that.
well, the reason you've noticed more truck traffic, especially down Miami Hill, is of course because much more have been closed, you know, and they, instead of going down much more,
Okay.
they were coming down Miami Hill.
Yeah.
Now, we had complaints about that, I talked to the chief about that. It was mainly Hafner's trucks, I believe, was it not? Yeah. He called directly, talked to them, and, you know, they sort of got that worked out,
Okay.
yeah.
And much more is open.
Yeah, much more now.
Trucks go
It
down
has
much more?
reopened, yeah. Yeah.
They go down there much more.
Yeah,
That's nuts.
all right.
Thank you.
Okay, all right, the building report from Mr. Holloway. Rod, you want to go ahead and give us a half an hour on this report?
45 minutes if I could. There's nothing oddly different other than this is the first month we put in rental inspections as a revenue stream for the village. So you can see we had 15 rental inspections in the month of September. We're still getting some trickling in.
Okay.
I think it's good.
Where are we overall on the rental inspections?
In terms of numbers,
Yeah.
we've probably had about 25 to 27 out of 400. So we've done very well with a couple folks. We just had a lot of 10 through Sunset Properties. So the big 2 units, we've got 10 inspections in the units of the Old Town Square.
Good.
Still have not gotten inspection from CMC. And we've gotten a lot from Sandra Laney and Larry Oski, who is John Miracle's group. So we've had a few people that have really been supportive.
Has CMC responded?
No, not yet.
Have they been contacted?
Yeah,
Yeah. All right,
so still working on that.
still working on that.
But, I mean, in general, I think after 2 months, I mean, we're on track, but I worry we're gonna get a die-off, which is probably gonna keep us short of our target of 140 or so this year.
Okay. Well, as we get closer, I guess we can contact, you know, re-remind them or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, something, yeah, okay. I want to take a minute to recognize Rod. He's just doing a splendid job in this position.
Here, here.
I would say that too.
He beats me in.
Is he employee of the month?
Yeah, right.
Isn't Employee of the year.
Keep up the good work there, bud.
Next topic.
All right, we have a spending request form from our good friend, Mr. Scherpenberg. Something about going to Florida to pick up salt, I don't understand.
Mexico.
Shotgun.
It's Cabo. That's where all the salt is.
$93,000? Is one guy's doing it?
Which one is it?
The first one.
I mean, are there any questions about this? It's for salt and for the Minutemen
It's out
to
of-
pick up the
The
leaves.
way it was in my packet,
Do
the
you want to
first
make a
one
comment
was-
about this?
Seasonal help.
The first one in the packet was seasonal help.
Oh,
Not out of the order.
We should go these item by item, right?
Yeah, seasonal help, yeah, it's a number one. Yeah, but I think Richard would like to make a comment about this.
Well, when we get to the, John and I reviewed these earlier to make sure we have the money for it. So we reallocated some money within his budget to make sure we could pay for most of this. The one that we don't have in the budget is for the salt, because that comes out of the same line as fuel. It's an operating type supply. So I created a new line, because his department is 320, which is parks. And so road salt, of course, should be in a street department. So I created a new line under a street department code that says road salt. But we would need to move the money from the contingency line to that line to pay for the salt. But we do have it in the contingency that we can move down.
So we can move it.
Yeah, the other stuff that he's asking for, we accounted for within his current budget.
Okay. So we're going to do it separately. We're going to do the Minutemen first. Do you want to just show hands?
Sure, I'm fine.
Yeah.
Everybody good with the
Favor?
favor of the 15,000, or not to exceed 15,000 for the Minutemen for leaf collection? And then the purchase of the salt.
Which is that?
All in favor? You
All in
say
favor? Okay, we're all good with that.
There's a tree
Baby
work
tree.
one.
There's
And
baby tree
trees.
also.
There's two more.
Yeah.
Trees,
Oh.
trees.
So,
A greedy
got a lot
little
of
thing.
Oh, sorry, yeah, geez, sorry, didn't see it, okay. All right, well, Davy Tree, we understand.
Is this is it increasing this, or, John, where are you? Yeah. Because
This
it
is a-
mentions asking an additional 5,000 for total. So you've already got the 30,000?
Yes,
So
we've-
it's just
we've-
an additional 5?
Right, which we reallocated out of one of the other accounts down to that.
Within his budget.
Because with the last couple windstorms, we had more damage that we had to call somebody in. So I just want to, hopefully it'll stay within that and underneath that, so. And
Yeah, I was
then
just
the,
clarifying the additional, because you're not asking for
Right, and then-
35, you're
So
asking
we're
for really
approving
5.
the
Right.
additional 5.
So we just reallocate it. And then the street light's the one that's on Pleasant Street that got hit by a truck in an auto accident.
Is there an insurance claim on that?
Yes.
Yeah, it says
So-
here,
Yeah.
So
reimbursement.
we have it on order because it takes so long to get in.
Yeah.
So we just chalk them with.
Sure, sure.
We just want to make sure we got that. I thought we already had that approved a while back, but apparently we didn't. So
All right, so show of hands, we'll do with this.
We're doing the
We're doing
With
the,
the
5,000 additional.
5,000,
5,000.
5,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
okay, and then the street light, which apparently we will be reimbursed
Yes.
on.
Okay.
that's one that from now.
Okay.
Good.
All right, thanks, sir.
All right, you guys have a good night. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Really, you're going to
He gets his
leave?
money and he leaves.
How come he gets?
Yeah, man. Nice, nice. And this is why Rod got Employee of the Year.
Okay, moving on, fiscal officer report. Richard?
Yeah. Anybody have any questions on the financials? I would assume I would've got some emails or calls prior to tonight, but I don't have anything else to add to it.
Is there any outliers you want to flag for us?
Not really at this point.
I mean, the good
We-
news is $2.8 million in cash. I don't know when the last time was we had $2.8 million in cash. So,
Yeah, I guess the one thing I will point out is that we will be looking at reallocations, probably in our December meeting.
Okay.
And then next year, we will do those in advance if we have to do them. But this year, we're kind of moving stuff around, but we'll look at those in the finance committee in November so we can approve them in December.
We set up a date for that, didn't we?
The December meeting?
No, the finance committee meeting.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we have that set or not.
I don't think we've published it yet, but I think we traded emails about what the date.
Yeah,
November
not,
14th or
I'm
something
drawing a
like that.
blank.
Okay,
But I
I'll
have-
follow up,
Yeah.
I'll check the email string and see if we have a date for that then.
Thank you.
All right.
So capital improvement, that'll be in January, right?
No, we'll have to do that in advance as well. So when we approve the appropriations, that's approving the
Okay.
capital improvements as well.
But in the past year, we've tried to now shift it to have the capital improvement meeting in December, is what we've done, because we only have one
So-
meeting in December, it was just the third week.
Yeah, so we can still, so we can approve the appropriations kind of in an aggregate for that under like contractual services or outlay or something like that. And then we can discuss how we want to spend it later, but as far as the actual appropriations, we can just set what's our limit.
Sure.
We're going to do, and we can do that when we approve the appropriations in December. And then if we want to go through the specifics of, okay, what are we going to spend it on? We can do that anytime.
Well, we've done
At
it,
that point.
we tried to move it up, because we used to wait until November, and then it would get, December, just January, and then we tried to move it to December. So did people prefer it in December, or did?
I just wanted to get my
I
wish
know.
list in on time.
Yeah, I mean, typically we want to do it earlier. We don't really want to do it in January because we're already in January,
Yeah.
in the year. But
'Cause
I
we-
don't know timing wise if it'll hit
It's the
before our
third,
December meeting, but, we could always do it, early December. When's that December
there's
meeting?
only one meeting, it's the third Monday.
There's only one, it's
We're gonna do-
Okay, so we could
It's the third
do,
Monday.
we could do a meeting early December and talk about, what the options are for spending then. For that particular.
Well, yeah, and what Tony used to do is just right before the council meeting, he would just schedule it right before, so it's like back to
Oh,
back.
yeah, I mean, we could do that too, because the appropriations is gonna be set, I mean, the amount that we're gonna spend in that is gonna be set. And then
Right.
just how are we gonna spend it would be the
Yeah,
question.
so I think that would be good to do
Okay.
in
Right,
December if we
December.
can, so that we
Yeah.
know going into the year what we've approved. Because to be honest, again, in the past, we haven't always made hard choices. We sort of just said, okay, well, we'll keep these and one or two of them just doesn't happen, so it works out. But it'd be good to have the conversation in December.
Yeah, I agree.
Is it a reasonable request, and feel free to push back, to get an executive summary for a report? Just
I mean, what are you looking for?
highlights, where to train our eye, trends.
So, like any watchouts or anything?
Yeah, and trends. What are you seeing? What's that? I mean, like a paragraph. If,
But
it sounds like
can I-
it's a
Can I
bit
pick your
much.
brain afterwards?
Yeah, sure.
I want to make sure I understand what you're looking for.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Can I make a comment?
Sure.
I was actually gonna request that I sit down with you and go through the report and kind of say, here's what you look for.
Mhm.
So I just can go into it knowing.
Sure.
So that's how I would approach it, as opposed to an executive summary. I don't know which is worse, but I had that thought today.
Well, now,
It would be good if everyone
just
had the
wanna-
same message though, too.
Yeah, I mean, really kind of need to know what you're looking for specifically, because the cash summary
Right.
is
Comprehensive.
it's a
Yeah,
P and L, if you will.
right.
I mean, as close as we can get to a P and L. So that's why I need to understand exactly what you're looking for as far as a summary.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I guess, us newer to council, we don't have a point of reference. I mean, 2.8 million, that's awesome. I remember when it was different than that.
1.15?
Yeah, so those trends, I think that, we can celebrate that and certainly.
But there's some one-time revenue helps in there from the.
Yeah, there was,
So just, well, that's.
So
that
that's
is
what we need to
exactly-
project.
Uh-huh. There's some one-time revenue, you can see that reflected, but we can talk offline. Yeah, I'm not trying to add more work, so it'd be just
Yeah, no,
almost
I
like
mean,
a
that's-
very quick,
Yeah.
yeah, okay, so that works. Thank you.
All right, and permission to address council. Cleared the room now. Bob?
I apologize for taking your time again, but it's a different subject, and I wanted to thank Randy for introducing our task force in the previous session. I'm here this evening to support the legislation before you, usually referred to as the MPF revisions to the ordinances. I'm chair of the MPF task force to quote, protect the unprotected, unquote. This task force was created several years ago to help preserve the architectural charm and character of Mariemont. We noted there were very few building guidelines or requirements for any of the areas beyond the historic district, and we refer to those outside the historic district as the unprotected. The goal is to provide some level of protection without onerous regulations. We had a consultant who strongly recommended creation of an overlay conservation district, but we rejected that because of the diversity of the housing within the village and the onerous requirements that it might impose. We attempted to create legislation based on neighborhood standards. The legislation before you received unanimous approval for the MPF trustees. Just for clarity.
Too soon.
The goals of our initial effort, which are before you, include 1, requiring permission before a structure is demolished. 2, strengthening ordinances relative to building a new residence in front of another one. 3, cleaning up language related to some of the setbacks requirements so it can be more easily understood and easier to interpret. 4, prevent construction of garages extending out in front of the main structure and thus becoming the main focal point of the property. And 5, providing a clear appeals process for all of these. I would appreciate your support for this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Thanks, Bob.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank
All right. All right, motion to pay the bills. Any question regarding the bills?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Bartlett?
Aye.
Ms. Brown Knight?
Aye.
Gelbaugh?
Aye.
Dr. Lewis?
Aye.
Ms. Rankin?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
All right, pay the bills. All right, it looks like we've got 2 committee reports.
Do you have that signed report, Susan?
About.
Well, you're gonna need to read it.
You can,
I've never read a report before. So do I start from the 2 or do I just start content?
Just read
To
the,
the body.
Okay. The Rules and Law Committee met on Monday, October 3rd, 2022. Present were Susan Brown Knight, Kelly Rankin, Marcy Lewis, Rod Holloway. Also in attendance were Mayor Bill Brown and Elliot Warner, owner of the local store Coolest Toys on Earth. The committee is making the following recommendations. Redefine a sandwich sign as an allowable temporary sign in Business District A, and to define what a standard sandwich sign must look like. All should adhere to a certain size, aesthetic, and weight. The next steps proposed. 1, Mr. Holloway to consult business district tenants regarding their recommendations for standards on size and aesthetic and weight. Mr. Holloway to bring his recommendations to the Rules and Law Committee. Rules and Law Committee will make a final recommendation. The look of the sandwich sign should tie in with the aesthetic of the surrounding architecture. Sign look subject to approval of the ARB. There we go. 2, utilize the permitting process to ensure limited number of sandwich signs on city property, uniformity of signs, and to maintain the village's right to have signs removed temporarily by sending notice to permit holders. Per resolution number R2222, empowering the Rules and Law Committee to approve naming rights, the below named mentions were approved for the following individuals: Marty and Bob Bartlett, and Racy and Jim Scott. Respectfully submitted, Susan Brown Knight, Kelly Rankin, which needs to be, and Marcy Lewis.
All right, you've heard the report. Do I have a motion and a second to accept the report?
so moved.
All right.
second.
Second, okay. Any discussion here?
Was there timing on how long these stay up? Anything on the sandwich
Yeah, the
signs?
sandwich boards.
I think we would come back with a proposal.
Yeah.
But that would be included in your, okay.
That would be included. I mean, right now, some of them are up all the time, some of them are up just during the business hours. The one thing in common, just all in the village right away, so this, we discussed with Ed, and I think he's supportive of us coming up with a permitting strategy that gives us then the option to grant people the license to advertise on our space for a limited period of time, and better manage it.
And have conformity in what the sign looks like.
Right, so how do you decide who gets the space? You get-
We haven't worked, I don't think we've worked on that.
Okay, all right.
We're trying to, much like the South End, come up with plots. There's only a certain number of
Yeah,
spots
space.
available.
Right, right.
And then we're gonna review it with Spinweber to see if this is close to the number of people that are interested, come up with a fee structure. So there's a lot more to be coming on this one.
I have a question.
I like it.
And this is just one that I've noticed. What about, like, have you talked about people coming in from outside of the community and putting the ones that get staked?
I like tutoring here,
The what?
Tutoring.
like the one that
This
says
permitting
tutoring.
process would then discourage people that don't have a vested interest in the village to use our land.
Yeah. 'Cause-
Essentially to advertise.
Yeah, because that's what I've been noticing is that when you start like coming down Miami, there's always like stuff for people
But
who
those
are
are sandwich.
bathed
Those
or.
are illegal
No, I know they're
signs,
not
and
sandwich signs, but.
I
and the-
routinely remove those signs.
Should I sign it, Kelly?
Unless- Yeah, unless they've called to ask for permission to put them there.
And then they stake them and they say
Yeah.
like, here will help you get your GMAT scores up or something like that.
Oh, really?
Or
Well,
it's-
I've never seen them.
Yeah, those are illegal temporary signs and should be removed.
Okay, that's,
They're not allowed per the code.
On these naming rights for the benches, I forget, do we do a separate resolution for each bench and then specify its location? Or,
No, well, Randy's working on the bench, like the kind of bench.
Oh, okay.
Oh, sorry, it got moved over here.
We don't have it worked out.
She hit my forehead, not my back.
I don't think I need to do a resolution, though. Yeah, okay, yeah. What did that one resolution say? Just we got the right to name benches if somebody pays X number of dollars?
Well, it's not, there's no set dollar amount, but it's just paying for the
So,
benches. essentially.
Contribution.
It was more of a process where they just didn't arbitrarily show up. So now it goes
They
to,
get vetted.
yeah.
Gotcha.
Are we all good?
Good.
Mr. Bartlett?
Aye.
Mr. Brown Knight?
Aye.
Ms. Gelbaugh?
Aye.
Dr. Lewis?
Aye.
Ms. Rankin?
Aye.
Mr. York?
Aye.
All right, we'll accept that report. All right, looks like we have, Rob, you're up for the subcommittee.
Yep. So the Finance Subcommittee met on Wednesday, October 12th, 2022, at 4 PM to discuss getting help with village administrator-type activities that Fiscal Officer Richard Ford is currently being asked to do. Present at the meeting were Finance Subcommittee members Rob Bartlett, Kelly Rankin, and Randy York, Fiscal Officer Richard Ford, Tax Administrator Chuck Barlow, and Mayor Bill Brown. The Fiscal Officer Ford shared that he is being asked to work on things that fit more under a village administrator role and that the workload is not sustainable for him. As such, he has requested help with some activities. Specifically, Richard has talked to Tax Administrator Barlow and Mayor Brown about the possibility of hiring someone to do part-time work to assist Chuck, and Chuck in turn would handle some of the village administrator-related tasks that Richard is currently doing. Both Chuck and the mayor are supportive of this. The current estimate is this part-time person would work roughly 20 hours a week in the tax office. Chuck is estimating we would need to pay the person about $20 an hour. Assuming the part-time role works 50 weeks per year and receives OPERS benefits but no other benefits since it is a part-time role, the cost would be roughly $23,000 a year. Also, because Chuck would be taking on additional responsibilities, Richard has said he is willing to forego $20,000 per year of his pay and have that $20,000 per year go to Chuck. Attached are a list of village administrator activities that Richard has put together where he needs help. Also attached is a list of village administrator activities that the Finance Subcommittee had put together previously. Richard and Chuck will work together to prioritize which activities Chuck will initially take on. If at a later date there is an opportunity to add to those duties, Richard and Chuck will do that using the attached lists. Richard and Chuck are proposing that the new help be hired starting in January 2023. If approved, the 2023 budget that Richard is developing would have the cost built in, and Chuck would start pulling together the role description and then post the role. One other thing that has been noted in the meeting is the email address used by village employees should have the name of their role and not their personal name. That way, if and when there is a turnover in a role, all the old emails will still be accessible for the new person. We are already doing this for some roles, such as the tax department, building department, and service department, but we're not doing it for all areas. For the work where Chuck will be taking on village administrator type activities, the committee recommends we set up the email address administrator@mariemont.org. The Finance Subcommittee supports Richard's request to create a part-time role to help in the tax office, and that Chuck in turn take on some of the administrative activities that Richard and the Finance Subcommittee have identified. The Finance Subcommittee also supports this role going into effect in January 2023, and that the appropriate monies be built into the 2023 budget. Respectfully submitted, Rob Bartlett, Kelly Rankin, and Randy York.
And of course, the lists are duties and activities and.
Yep, we're not going there.
Can we read them?
No, no, we cannot. Okay, you've heard the report. Do we have a motion and a second to accept the report?
Can I have a point of process? Just accepting the report does not mean just green lighting everything within the
Well,
report.
we haven't, no, I mean, just doing this is just you're accepting the report for discussion. We haven't voted
Thank you.
to approve the report. We're accepting it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
I'm not, so, if this is a role that is needed, I'm not clear, so there is, why there is not a point of process to discuss what is determined, what we need long-term, relative to the budget. And I am fine with the short-term, with a timeline, but a process that is, so there sounds like there's an immediate need, an immediate relief need. Get it. I'm not really comfortable, I do not see any kind of process built in to assess the needs and the long-term needs of the village.
Regarding?
Regarding an administrative role. Because if we are hiring somebody, it just seems like then this setup, I mean, we're not, at the end of '23, we're going to continue with the setup. And we are not going through a search process. We're not saying, do we need a full-time person? We are not figuring out what our long-term goals are for the village and what skill sets do we need. And so I don't see any of that kind of built in here.
You're right, it's not built in here. I think I was envisioning at least, I can't not speak for the other two, but we are hopefully going to be working on the master plan. And that's, the one, the Ohio plan Mike had shared with us. And as part of that process, I would hope that we would address that issue about what's the right structure longer term, given the activities that are identified as part of the master plan process.
So if we hire an employee, then we're tied to that employee. So if we have, if we decide to do something differently, we have an employee that we just hired.
The part-time person
Yeah.
we're talking about.
Yeah, that just seems short-sighted.
Well, but it's
That's
addressing the short-term need that you talked about, that you were supportive of.
That's fine, but that's not done through a hiring, and then you have an employee, and then you change, what, do you let the employee go at the end of
Well, we're sort
12
of
months?
moving it. I mean, it's not like we're hiring a separate person. I mean,
No, you're paying for a part-time.
well, I mean,
Yeah.
in the tax office, yeah.
Yeah.
To take on.
And that person, and to answer your question, I think,
You're talking about that person?
yes.
I am saying that this plan, to me, feels very short-sighted. I understand contract support, where people come in and provide relief on a temporary basis. That makes sense, especially if this is going to be, if we are creating a plan and what we need and determining how we want to allocate our resources accordingly. You don't commit to, when you know you're going through a process, you don't commit to hiring somebody when that could very well change, but at minimum, we should open up and know what we want long-term. And that, Chuck, very respectfully, could very well be you, and, but we haven't assessed a skill set, we haven't assessed any of those pieces. So while I'm very comfortable short-term, I'm not comfortable greenlighting a part-time employee, and then the perception is we are committing to that plan. That is, you don't greenlight an employee if you're going to do something for 12 months.
But if we went through the Ohio plan thing, he said, didn't he say 18 months a minimum? So you're saying we do?
12 to 18, yeah.
So you're saying we do nothing?
No, I'm saying that we do something temporary. So that is not hiring an employee. A temporary relief involves either a contract or temp, but it doesn't involve hiring and moving around and,
Okay. So that's,
shifting.
your concern is if we did it as a contractor, instead of as a 1099, instead of as a employee.
Yeah, I mean, we're hiring an employee. That's not really knowing full well that what I am concerned about is I want a process where we figure out what our needs are and create whether that's a part-time, whether that's a full-time, and then you go through a hiring process and search. Having that employee sitting there is not going to lend itself strategically to an open-ended search like that. That employee is potentially on the chopping block. So, and we'll all be aware of that. It's just not, to me, it's not the best structure, nor is it the most respectful structure.
It's not fair.
Yeah.
So again, and I'm not disagreeing with
yeah.
what you're saying. So if it was a contractor, not an employee, you would be better with this then?
I'd be fine.
Okay.
I wouldn't,
Because I think, and I'm pretty sure it's on the task list, is give us a roadmap of the optimal organizational structure for the village.
Correct.
That's part of where we're trying to get to.
yeah. And then you do, right, and then you figure out, and it could be that, Chuck, you're in your dream job and everything aligns and it's beautiful and it's obvious, right? That still means you still do a search, you still do, you go through a process if you're hiring an administrator. So that would be my recommendation, is to do that on a temporary basis and provide the support through a contract
For the part-time employee.
for the tax office,
Chuck,
correct?
I'd just like to ask your opinion on, from your perspective as a tax administrator, how.
I can tell you what happened. I can tell you what happened in Norwood. I had 2 full-time clerks, and I had, at one point, 3 contractual people. They were all 3 retired tax administrators. It was awesome. Then the state auditors came down and said, we are not allowed to have contractual people. Because to be a contractual, of those 3, only 1 worked at another city. This contractual, the other 2, worked at Norwood only. Between, well, let's see, one was 10 to 3, and the other one worked like 8 to 2. But because they only reported to Norwood, and they worked nowhere else, they worked certain hours, they are considered employees. So, one unfortunately passed away, just didn't replace her. The other one had to switch to becoming a part-time employee with
Okay, so
PERS.
the designation was incorrect. I mean, if you have a contract that is right, was there a limited time frame on the contract?
No, they were contractual, that's
In
how they were paid.
perpetuity, yeah.
Yeah.
And then you probably provided, I mean, there's a whole duties test, right? So they didn't pass the duties test. So we would have to make sure that we adhered to that.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
That
again,
includes.
I don't know, I would defer to Ed, because there's contractions, employees, and because the idea would be right now, they would probably work, the tax office would be open 10 to 2, with that person there manning the desk, people coming in,
Yeah.
doing mail, whatever, and also by appointment, which would be outside of 10 to 2, would be with me. But I don't, with what it may be, I may be sitting down there doing taxes from whatever time, or there's another function to be done. I don't know, it's unknown. So that's why the idea of a part-time clerk. Now, personally, I'm not up for having a temporary employee with tax department because it's social security numbers and tax returns, and there's major confidentiality issues. So I would rather have someone that I have a little more control over other than a temp that comes in, because if it's a temp agency, I depending on how it goes, it could be A today, and then in 3 weeks it's B.
Yeah.
There's just someone showing up just to do whatever. And again, I take the confidentiality pretty serious.
You gotta have some consistency there.
Is the intention of this to hire you a full-time assistant?
No.
No, part-time, just about 20 hours a week, 10 to
Is
2.
that acceptable to you?
Yeah, I would love to have a full-time employee, but to make it be realistic right now.
Work within our budgetary
Yeah,
constraints.
I mean, because I know in the past there were 2.
What's the search for? Is the search for the
My
part-time
concern,
employee?
my concern is one, this ties our hands in terms of what we are gonna do. One, suddenly we're making decisions that create a job or no job for an employee at the end of next year. So we're setting ourselves up for that. So that's the first thing. The second piece is that it is not, when you are setting up there are bookkeeping and accounting temp firms. So it's not like this is not a standard thing that folks do relative to confidentiality, that type of thing. But that is the concern. This is a short-term setup. And I don't think it behooves us to hire somebody with the implication that that's a long-term structure. It might be. It might be, but I'm not saying, but we haven't made that decision.
But you're also saying we shouldn't do anything based on something we might or might not do, depending on how these bids come out. Or we might do in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah,
I mean,
we have a lot to decide.
It's
we have a lot to decide.
6 of one, half a dozen of another. I personally am in favor of this.
Yeah.
Well, and again, I don't think Susan's, what I hear her say she's against is just, the concern is this becomes the long-term solution because, or just even if we hire somebody and then end up 12 months later firing them. And that doesn't feel good to sit there and go through that process necessarily. Because at the end of doing a master plan, we decide to do something different,
That's
who knows?
an if.
Pardon me?
But that's an if.
Yeah, no, it is.
Because
So is this group willing to say, okay, if that's, because we do have sometimes a habit of letting short-term fixes become long-term solutions. And if this group is willing to say, hey, if that's not the right long-term solution, we're willing to go ahead and say, that's a part-time role and we're getting rid of it. But I just want to make sure everyone's going to be okay with that because we have trouble with that.
Go ahead, Kelly.
But the other what if is Chuck takes on this role and he moves into a full-time administrator role, and then this person who is in the tax department becomes solely responsible for the tax department. I mean, that's the other side of the coin of hiring somebody and then letting
Yeah, it's
them
a positive-
go.
that's a positive end,
That's
yeah.
the positive end of the relationship.
Sure.
Which
And
is
it could, totally agree with you.
Right.
Is this group willing to say if that's not the result, that we're okay firing somebody who's a part-time employee?
Well, can't you make it a temporary part-time?
Right.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Say, okay, we're doing this for 1 year, and
That's
we're
fine.
in this process.
Tell them that, you mean.
Yeah,
right up
and be
front.
very clear right up front.
Because to your point, Chuck, it'd be great if you get somebody who's already retired for that kind of stuff, because they got the skills.
Yep.
And they probably would like to have a part-time job but not a full-time job. That's a great segue for them in retirement. So, if we're trying to target somebody like that, it seems like that would be amenable to them as well, that it's, for right now, the commitment's only for 1 year at this point in time. So I'm fine with that, if we just say the commitment, to Richard's point, if the commitment's just for 1 year at this point
Yeah,
in
I'm fine
time, we
with
come
that.
back and revisit it at the end of 2023 and decide.
Yeah, look, this may not be the perfect setup or the perfect way of doing it, but the other option is to do what? Nothing?
This is.
No, she's not
we
saying
wanna-
that.
Well, I'm not saying she is, but I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Like
It's
we're-
imperfect,
She's
but
just-
we're getting
we're-
closer.
If we're deciding among,
It's just a huge step in the right
options,
direction,
yeah.
from my perspective.
kind of gets us there.
Yeah.
Gets
So,
us off the road.
so again, you want me to modify this to say, we can put something in here that says, this will be, for right now, it's temporary for 1 year to,
Yep.
Fisher saying, we just modify the report, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's what your
All right.
intention is, yeah.
What are
Or
you gonna say, Richard?
Well, I think, is the next step to put together resolutions for that, or?
Generally, we'd probably change the salary ordinance, won't we?
Well, this doesn't exist.
No,
This is
they
new.
want to do it as a resolution.
Yeah,
no.
this
So-
doesn't exist.
create a
Then
new
the-
role.
Yeah, if
The
we just
question
create-
is, I have a couple other questions too. The first one being, so this is a long list, right? This is a very long list.
Right.
So this isn't something a human being can do
No.
successfully full-time, right? Is that correct?
No, I don't know that,
No, that's, the intent isn't, the intent isn't for all of that stuff.
Right,
Those were
these
just
are-
things that we were brainstorming.
Yeah,
at the
that's
time.
not a job description,
No,
that's a
that's,
task.
they got together and came up with the list of what needs to be done and what needs to be addressed.
Well,
They're
there's
not
just
saying
some-
Richard's gonna do one and he's gonna do the other,
Well,
isn't it?
we still- they won't-
Decide
We still have.
they're not gonna
to
get to all
prepare
those things. There's no way
Yeah.
Chuck's gonna be able to get to all
No,
these
no.
things.
No, we still-
There's
that-
no
that
way
still needs
anyone
pared
can do
down.
those things.
Yeah.
That still needs pared down.
Correct. That was just all the ideas thrown out there.
So are we paring down, Chuck, and I apologize, I don't know, your background. So do you have an HR background?
Early in my career, I guess, I graduated with But you see with HR, I worked for Fairway, I was a store manager, so I had 200 employees.
Okay, so are we aligning the duties with competencies is my question. And that might be, I'm not trying to do a whole session here, but I want to make sure that that is also part of the we are aligning duties with your competencies, we're setting you up for success. And then, you know, we have to step back and say, what are the long-term needs? What are the skill sets? Are they aligned? Short-term? Like, if you don't have that background, I just don't, I want to be clear that, you know, we got to set you up for success. So, like, if you are tasked with an HR duty, right, that's not something that I think's appropriate.
But
so
does that assume that that's the top priority in this list?
No, I'm just saying, I want to
so the
align
things
duties
that-
and competencies.
I mean, just if the person who does this role checks like, 11 out of, of these points, I didn't count them, but not that one, you can't consider them? Is that, I mean,
I'm saying align duties with competencies.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff on there that
Yeah.
won't be given on. What starts this is there's a lot of things that pop up on a daily basis of things like, just last time I was here, we were doing same registration and it had to be done like right then. And so, I'm in a meeting on a poll thing and I'm at the same time trying to fix same registration that wasn't done a year
Yeah.
ago. So, those type of things are easy for Chuck to take on to fix the same registration. I mean, nobody's trained in same registration, you just gotta figure it out, right?
Okay.
So, so it's those type of things that are coming up on a daily basis that just need solved.
Yeah.
And those are some of the short-term things. Now, long-term, we need to look at those and go through those lists and say, okay, what are the things that are the most important for the village at this time? Those are the things that.
And where do we want to be?
Yeah.
And what skill sets do we need?
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is
So
some of the conversation we talked about in that finance committee, but, it's a longer-term discussion, but right now, we're just trying to fix that short-term, but I understand your concern of, you don't want a short-term fix to, kind of be our normal, but yeah.
Okay, can I ask Chuck a question real quick? You've seen this list.
Yeah, yeah.
Is there anything on here that you don't feel that you're competent to perform?
No, just like
That's all
anything
I
else,
wanted to know.
if I got to, if there was something in the situation, because that's a list of
Yeah.
things, that's not situations.
Right.
I'm not arrogant enough to think if I get in a situation I can't handle it, I'm not gonna ask for help from someone.
But you feel confident with
Yeah,
this list?
I think so. The HR aspect, like I said, I had 200 employees and
Well, and there's
probably
been.
60% of them were teenagers,
Yeah.
so.
Well, and we've worked together on the pool. I think he's
But that,
amazing to
I
work with.
was
so-
what, I guess 4 years on the city council in Norwood, and then 12 years as tax commissioner and deputy treasurer, and working on other projects, different things, so.
And there's not resources,
Right.
You have me.
as they point.
And Richard, and Joni, and Allison.
No, I was
and-
looking at Joni.
Oh, yeah, well, Joni can't go anywhere.
So yeah, to answer your question, the first part of the list is the ones that Richard has, these are his immediate needs. And then the second list is more what the finance subcommittee had created that said, these are longer term things that still need to be addressed. We're not envisioning those are gonna get addressed at this point in time. It's just capturing what those items are, but.
Right, we wanted
The
an
first page
all-inclusive
is what
list.
Richard has said, here's what I need help with now,
Right.
so.
Hire Rod. Rod can do anything.
He's employee of the year.
Can't you, Rod?
Rod
So-
for president.
So, I agree with you, Ed. I think we do need to have a resolution,
Yeah.
because we don't have this role. We have to create a role and
Create the
pay for
role,
it.
create the role, I think, to a resolution, but then at the end of the day, we probably should have added to our salary ordinance.
Yeah,
Do we do that every year?
could I
Tony?
ask
Yeah.
a question? I mean, we've had part-time tax administrators in the past, right? Or was that a full-time person who was working?
I think it was full-time, wasn't it?
It was full-time,
No, it
but
wasn't
it says part-time on
It
it.
was part-time.
There's already
What was
part-time.
that?
Yeah, before Deanna?
Yeah.
Or-
Yeah.
Patty had.
Back when Pat
Patty,
had an
Yeah,
assistant.
Debbie?
So
Was
there
it
so
Debbie?
there was an
It might have been
assistant
Debbie.
role, so I think that might.
Patty?
Right, but you still need a resolution to assign somebody to that role.
Right.
I mean, or just even to say what the pay is for, because
Oh,
I don't know
yeah.
if we've ever
Okay.
updated that pay for that role either, I don't know what the.
Okay.
And again, we
It's
want to do
on
this
there,
on an
but I
hourly
don't-
basis, and we want to declare it's a part-time role.
Is it gonna be a
Because I don't want-
1099 or a PERS?
Thank you for
It's
clarifying.
gonna be a W-2.
W-2. So it'll be, he or she will participate in PERS, right? Okay.
That's what we built that into the
Okay.
cost for this.
That's the only benefit.
Right.
Correct.
That'll help.
So
And
when
it
it
will-
comes, so maybe Ed, you and I can work on the resolution
Okay.
along with Joni to say,
great.
what does it look like to get this role? And looking at what we had in the past for
Okay.
that, so maybe it's just updating some of that.
Anything else, Susan?
And then we'll put into that also that it's to be reassessed at the end of 2023 for council to decide.
I just like people to be, I just want to be clear, I want people to be successful. So just a lot, like goes back to the original part-time job description we had. This is not going to set anybody up for success, it just won't. And so, and that is my concern. And to align experience with responsibilities, I think is going to be key. And that we take some time to figure out, what the village in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, what are we going to need to do to set the village up for long-term success? What does that look like in that position? And then, make sure, and Chuck, you might be that person, so I want to be very clear there, but that we go through a process. So I want to say very clearly, we go through a process to make sure that we're not just voting on lists like this moving forward.
Sure, right. That everything?
Gotcha.
All right, Mr. Bartlett.
I'll
Mr.
put
Brown, aye.
something together and send
Aye.
it to you, okay?
Gelbaugh.
Aye.
Dr. Lewis.
Aye.
Mrs. Rankin.
Aye.
Mr. York.
Aye.
All right, please have that report.
May that come off, Rob, or do you want to leave it on?
I guess, let's get the resolution passed, and then we'll,
Okay, I'll leave on for now.
yeah, leave it on for now. We'll get that done.
Okay.
All right, under miscellaneous, leaf collection will begin today. In fact, I saw them up on what it would today. The last, we'll be in late mid-December. I'll re-announce that later,
We have a definitive date for that, right?
December the 19th,
Oh, we do.
yeah. But I mean, there's no point in reminding somebody of it now. And I was thinking too, I've been driving through the village, of course, and a lot of leaves in the street already. I said to my wife, she should work on designing a flyer that's it's sort of a gentle reminder, about not breaking leaves in the street, so on and so forth.
Good luck
And that
with
we would get that printed up and give it to the police, and then they could just, when they notice leaves in the street or something, they could just put it in a mailbox or something. It's just sort of a gentle reminder. I think it's a good way to communicate directly with those that either don't know or just doing it.
And can we send multiple copies to certain landscaping companies?
Obviously, if we see them working and they're blowing them in the street, yeah, we can drop some off to them. But I'm just proposing this as sort of a first step to try to remedy what is every year a situation about breaking leaves in the street.
Is that actually in our code of ordinances that they can't be in the street?
It's not, but it's highly suggested. And
Yeah.
every year it comes out.
Well, I know we
should
make
put
that
it in.
caveat,
We
but.
should put it in.
But
I
I'm
think we
asking,
really-
should that-
Should we?
put
I
it
don't
in.
know. But then
Should
if
that
we
go
do,
in?
are we going to arrest people for not?
Well, no,
but-
I'm not saying that.
Find them.
It's basically as a courtesy. I mean, you just.
But I
Give me a
think
gun.
Marcy, we
I'll
should
be
put
out
something
there.
in the code book.
Does
Don't
light
mess with
strike-
Kelly, man.
If we don't have something in the code book, how do you find them? You can't, right? I mean, that's the last resort.
I'm not even talking about that. I'm just talking about putting a flyer in the mailbox.
situation.
Yeah, yeah.
Don't put it in the mailbox either. It's not, you're not allowed to do that. So-
Oh, jeez. Okay, Rob.
You're not.
Continuing.
Well, I'll have her knock on the door.
No, you can just slide it.
Yeah,
in.
slide Okay. I'm just saying, I think this idea of a flyer is gonna fly.
You're just trying to find something.
Bill, you're starting to lose it.
Because she's too busy finding things for me to do. So, all right, we've announced that. All right, proposal to change the time of the council meetings to 6 PM.
What?
Are there,
Oh,
is there
sorry.
discussion
Have
about
we ever
that?
figured out where that originated?
Yeah, it was Rob's suggestion.
No, it was not. You know that's not my suggestion.
I think it was Richard
I have trouble
suggested.
making,
I'm pretty sure it was Rob. I don't
Yeah, they're
No,
right.
come on, the new guy's gotta take the fall. It was Richard's suggestion.
throw him under the bus.
Well, there you go.
I
Well, let's talk about it.
Anybody for
That's fine.
5:30?
It works a little hardship when,
As
you
long
know,
as we
these
don't
meetings
have-
go long and they go late, and he's got a hour and a half drive, you know.
I would have trouble making it all consistent.
What, a
Well,
six?
I think that would be
Yeah.
okay. What about you, Susan? Could you make
No
it
tears shed.
There we go.
Do we have
Oh, I-
to wait until you get there? If you're not there on?
No, you can go.
Oh, then
Well, I
we're
guess we
fine.
should ask Ed.
What?
How practical is it for you to be able to go
I do
to
what?
Can you make it at
a
6?
6 o'clock meeting?
Yeah, I can.
You can?
I don't like to, but I can.
Yeah, you can. Susan, can you?
I can.
You can. I know you're squeamish about it.
No, it's fine. If you all want to meet at 6, just don't do the 5s anymore.
Well, I mean,
Do
this is
committee
special, yeah, this is
meetings.
special.
Yeah, no, I'm fine.
That's,
If you want to do it at 6, it's fine with me.
we
Good by
okay?
me.
That's fine by me.
Mercy?
I don't care either way.
You don't
I mean,
care
I'm
either
fine with
way?
it, but I don't have any objection either.
Okay, so we all seem to be in agreement?
6 and 1.
I will say traffic.
It's a democracy. I'll go with the democracy. Hey, you know.
Isn't it
So we
fast?
I vote no, but that's okay.
Ed,
Oh, you can't make it?
Well,
Oh,
I just can't consistently. I can't commit to that.
oh.
Oh.
I said that. I said I can't commit to consistently being here at 6:30.
What about,
I'm working out in Blue Ash, and I don't know what
Oh.
traffic's gonna be like on 71 and stuff
yeah,
like
that's a
that,
good
so
point.
Gotcha.
I just
Oh,
don't
so
know.
Well,
you
that's-
don't want to meet at 6?
Correct.
I thought you were the one who suggested.
No, that was
Oh,
just a joke.
But they were all
Joke.
saying.
Oh, our plan is
There you
working.
go. Thanks.
It's only 2 days a month.
Somehow,
I just don't know. I
somehow.
can't. I don't know what the traffic's.
Hey, who's on first?
Going to the bar.
Tough, real tough.
Well, look, why don't we do,
Yeah.
let's try it. Let's try it. See
Who's
it.
on
See it.
second?
Yeah, I was gonna
Ed,
say.
we
it
need to
feels-
What's on first?
we need to change the ordinance.
We'll need to change the ordinance.
Oh,
Okay, why don't we change it?
well, but then
Because
if
it's-
it doesn't work, then we have to change it back, right?
Yeah.
It's not, I mean, to change the ordinance.
What if we say
that's kind of-
6:15?
What? Yeah, all right.
Nobody does anything in
That's-
half,
I'm-
quarter of an hour. No.
Is it a big deal to change the ordinance?
Not at all.
No.
Well-
The one thing is, it is a challenge if you try and have meetings beforehand, like we do permanent
Yeah.
improvement.
Today?
Yeah, like today, or permanent improvement. If we're gonna have this review of, oh, here's what the capital budget is.
Valid.
Because we do it right before the council
is
meeting, it's
valid.
like, okay, that's gotta start even earlier then. So-
Yeah, I think that actually matters.
All right, let's not
So
do
we'll
it.
just leave it at
Just
6:30.
leave it at
Just as
6:30.
context,
rude.
When didn't we change it from 7 to 6:30 at
Yes.
some point?
Yeah.
Yes, we did.
So it's earlier than it was.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're just
But I
gonna
mean-
leave it.
Let's leave it.
This is like
Oh, my God, so
the
we're just leaving
Vietnam,
it?
Just leave it.
Vietnam
Just leave it.
War
It's not worth
settlement
the
discussions where they couldn't
We
decide if
already
the table
did.
was gonna be
But
round
then I
or
didn't
square.
know that we were voting on something. It was.
Even though it was Rob's idea
Today's
to
a
begin
very
with.
confusing day for me.
Just move on.
Okay,
We're just
okay.
leaving it, we're leaving
Ups,
it as.
down,
Okay,
right.
well, all right. For now, we'll leave it there. I'll bring it up next meeting.
Okay.
Please do.
All right, okay,
Everybody's
everybody's
waiting
waiting.
for me not to show up in the meeting.
I'm working it.
Oh, it's this. This doesn't have.
The Ohio Ethics Training, Tuesday, November the 1st.
Yay.
Where is that?
Yay.
It's gonna be, I believe it's gonna be here.
Is it?
Oh, no, I thought they were
I thought
switching
he
it
was
'cause
looking
there's
at
too many
the,
people.
Well, I think because we don't know the exact number. If the number's reasonable, it was gonna be here. If it's gonna be a big number, I
We have
guess.
RSVPs though, right? Allison's been collecting.
Have we? Do we?
It's gonna be here.
It's here.
Yeah, it's gonna be here.
Oh, I
That's
thought there were
sad.
over 30 people coming.
Well, the room can accommodate 34.
Oh, okay.
where do you see that
That was
posted?
impressive
That was good.
sleight of hand there.
Well, we don't have the,
You can make an
Sign
ed.
up anywhere.
I don't see a sign anywhere.
all right, anyway, we'd like, as many people to show up for that as possible, including Rod. All right, determine the date for the December council meeting.
Oh. What's your calendar there?
12th or 19th? 12th is the second Monday, 19th is the third.
Oh, that, yeah, I don't,
Richard, does it matter to you?
It does. I would prefer the 19th.
The 19th? We usually do have it a little later in the month.
It's the third.
Because this is the second,
Yeah.
I have a conflict.
Okay.
So that, are we agreeing to the 19th then?
Yes,
Well,
we
I
are.
think if we're gonna do the permanent improvement discussion as part of that, right before that, I think it's really important that Richard be there for that, so.
Yeah. All right, so the 19th. Put it down. Everybody mark the date.
12/19. It's my birthday.
Is it?
All right.
No.
Mary Emery's birthday.
Are you ready?
It's Mary
Yeah.
Emery's birthday.
All right, guys, we have a lot of resolutions to get
All
through.
right, let's do it.
This is the third reading, a resolution authorizing an agreement between the Village of Mariemont and the Board of Hamilton County Commissioners relative to the improvement of Hiawatha.
So
And
moved.
that's the third reading. All right, I need a motion and a second to adopt.
So moved.
Second.
And Mr. Bartlett?
Aye.
Mrs. Brown Knight?
Aye.
Ms. Gelbaugh?
Aye.
Dr. Lewis?
Aye.
Mrs. Rankin?
Aye.
Mr. York?
Aye.
Okay.
Okay.
Be adopted.
Accept the amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the county auditor and to declare emergency.
Okay, you've had the first reading. I need a motion and a second to suspend the rules and allow for the second and third reading.
So moved.
Second.
Second, Mr. Bartlett?
Aye.
Ms. Brown Knight?
Aye.
Ms. Gelbaugh?
Aye.
Dr. Lewis?
Aye.
Mrs. Rankin?
Aye.
Mr. York?
Aye.
All right, may we have the second reading?
To accept the amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the county auditor and to declare emergency.
Okay, is there any discussion? Do we know what this is?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, may we have the third reading?
To accept the amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the county auditor and to declare emergency.
Okay, I need a motion and a second to adopt.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Bartlett?
Aye.
Mrs. Brown Knight?
Aye.
Ms. Gelbaugh?
Aye.
Dr. Lewis?
Aye.
Mrs. Rankin?
Aye.
Mr. York?
Aye.
All right, I need a motion and a second to evoke the excuse me, the emergency clause.
So moved. Oh, wait, Albert.
I'm sorry, who?
Do we have a second over here?
Second.
Second. Mr. Bartlett?
Aye.
Ms. Brown Knight?
Aye.
Ms. Gelbaugh?
Aye.
Dr. Lewis? Ms.
Aye.
Rankin?
Aye.
Mr. York?
Aye.
Okay.
Okay. To reappoint Rick Gibson as Mayor's Court Magistrate for the calendar years 2023 and 2024 to set compensation.
Okay, that's the third reading. I need a motion and a second to adopt.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Bartlett?
Aye.
Ms. Brown Knight?
Aye.
Ms. Gelbaugh?
Aye.
Dr. Lewis?
Aye.
Mrs. Rankin?
Aye.
Mr. York?
Aye.
Okay, to confirm the reappointment of Rod Holloway as village zoning officer for calendar years 2023, 2024, and to set compensation.
All right, that was the third reading. I need a motion and a second to adopt.
So moved.
Second.
I'd like to know if Rod had anything he'd like to say.
Do you want to vote?
Because we need to make this longer.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need to. Mr. Bartlett?
Aye.
Ms. Brown Knight? Susan?
Aye.
Aye. Ms. Gelbaugh?
Aye.
Dr. Lewis?
Aye, aye.
Ms. Rankin?
Aye.
Mr. York?
Aye.
To confirm the reappointment of Edward J. McTighe as solicitor for the Village of Mariemont
All right,
for the
this is-
calendar years 2023 and 2024.
This is the big one. All right. Need a motion and a second to adopt.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Bartlett?
Aye.
Mrs. Brown Knight?
Aye.
Ms. Gelbaugh?
Aye.
Dr. Lewis?
Aye.
Mrs. Rankin?
Aye.
Mr. York?
Aye.
All right, Ed, you're in.
Great.
Hey, Ed, would you like to say anything?
Well, you guys know how I feel about this place. I love it out here.
Okay, to reappoint Peter Wren as a member of the Architectural Review Board for the calendar years 2023 and 2024.
Yeah, after tonight, I don't know.
Let's pass him in.
Motion and a second
Table
to adopt.
that. So moved.
Second.
Mr. Bartlett?
Aye.
Ms. Brown Knight?
Aye.
Ms. Gelbaugh?
Aye.
Dr. Lewis?
Aye.
Mrs. Rankin?
Aye.
Mr. York?
Aye.
To reappoint Eric Marslin as a member of the Parks Advisory Board for calendar year 2023. That's a first reading.
That's a first reading. All right, we'll have the second reading next week, next time.
Next time.
To reappoint Andrew Seeger as a Andrew Seeger, Steve Spooner, Mark Glassmeyer, Jason Brown Knight, John Figgs, John Morgan as a member of the South 80 Trails, Gardens, and Park Advisory Board for the calendar year 2023.
Okay, those are all third readings on those folks. We're kind of lumping them in here together. Motion and a second to adopt.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Bartlett.
Aye.
Mrs. Brown Knight.
Aye.
Mrs. Gelbach.
Aye.
Dr. Lewis.
Aye.
Mrs. Rankin.
Aye.
Mr. York.
Aye.
All right, they're in.
Okay, to reappoint Barbara Whitaker as a voting member of the Tree Advisory Board for the calendar year 2023, and also Marcy, sorry.
Okay, so we're putting the two together there?
Yes.
Yes, okay, motion and a second to adopt.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Bartlett.
Aye.
Mrs. Brown Knight.
Aye.
Ms. Gelbach.
Aye.
Dr. Lewis.
Aye.
Mrs. Rankin.
Aye.
Mr. York.
Aye.
All right.
Okay, to reappoint Mary Beth York, Margaret Jevick, Kristen Van Scoy as voting members of the Tree Advisory Board for the calendar years 2023 and 2024.
All right, third reading, motion and a second to adopt.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Bartlett.
Aye.
Mrs. Brown Knight.
Aye.
Ms. Gelbach.
Aye.
Dr. Lewis.
Aye.
Mrs. Rankin.
Aye.
Mr. York.
Aye.
All right, they're on.
Okay, to appoint Larry Gray as a non-voting member of the Tree Advisory Board for calendar years 2023 and 2024.
Oh, can't we put Bob Felton in there?
No, that's just
He's
one
just-
year,
Brad?
just 2023.
Okay, all right. Okay, motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
Did you get the?
No, I didn't, I'm sorry.
Kelly, me.
Mr. Bartlett.
Aye.
Ms. Brown Knight.
Aye.
Ms. Gelbach.
Aye.
Dr. Lewis.
Aye.
Mrs. Rankin.
Aye.
Mr. York.
Aye.
Okay, to appoint Bob Felton as a non-voting member of the Tree Advisory Board for the calendar year 2023.
All right, motion and a second, please.
So moved.
Second.
All right, either Rob or Randy got it. Mr. Bartlett.
Aye.
Mrs. Brown Knight.
Aye.
Ms. Gelbach.
Aye.
Dr. Lewis.
Aye.
Mrs. Rankin.
Aye.
Mr. York.
Aye.
Okay, to reappoint Jason Brown Knight as a non-voting member of the Tree Advisory Board for the calendar year 2023.
Point of process. Is it okay to vote for your
Yes.
husband?
Sure.
Randy did.
Randy did. Well,
Because she's
Randy did
watching.
Yeah, she's watching, right.
It gets him out of the house an
Right.
extra night during the week.
Why don't you?
Noted. I was like, I'm now reflecting on that.
All right, but come on, motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Bartlett.
Aye.
Mrs. Brown Knight.
Aye.
Ms. Gelbach.
Aye.
Dr. Lewis.
Aye.
Mrs. Rankin.
Aye.
Mr. York.
Aye.
All right.
Okay, to reappoint Brad Lockhart as a non-voting member of the Tree Advisory Board for calendar years 2023 and 2024. It's a second reading.
Oh, that's the second reading, okay. Any discussion on that? No? Okay.
Okay,
We'll
to
do that next
reappoint,
time.
to reappoint Scott Hamlin, Stan Baylor, Lynn Tumler to the Audit Committee for the calendar years 2023 and 2024.
All right, motion and a second to put these three.
So moved.
Second.
Second, Mr. Bartlett.
Aye.
Mrs. Brown Knight.
Aye.
Ms. Gelbach.
Aye.
Dr. Lewis.
Aye.
Mrs. Rankin.
Aye.
Mr. York.
Aye.
All right, I think that takes care of the resolutions.
It does.
Okay, to amend section 151.021 of the Mariemont Code of Ordinances pertaining to permits, certificates, and fees.
Okay, second reading, any discussion here?
Yeah, Rod, I didn't bring my file with me, so help me out here, will you? Rob had contacted me about this, this particular code section. It was a little ambiguous, I think, so we cleared it up. And do you have the new language?
She handed them out.
I put one
She
on
handed
your
them out.
desk.
Do I have it?
Mm-hmm.
Is this it?
That's the handout.
Oh, I got it, I have it right here, I'm sorry. We changed in 151.021B1, we added a provision of, if however the residence is a contributing property to the NHL application, is in a historic site, structure, or landmark, or is located within the historic district, no permit shall issue unless the proposed changes are first approved by the ARB as prescribed in section E below 151.025, 151.075. Yes, that just kind of cleared up a discrepancy that was in there that Rob pointed out to us. So I need somebody to amend, make a motion to amend this ordinance to include the language I just read.
Before we do that, I sent you an email, but I sent it really late today, so I'm sure you didn't see it. I like.
Today, you said?
Yeah, but it was like at 5 o'clock.
Okay.
I like the part where Marcy had in here after the first sentence, is it, you know, about what the stuff, that it's not, it's consistent with any existing structures and won't cause any kind of depreciation value. Marcy's version said this determination will be done by the building department. I would think we'd want to enter that back in there just for clarity.
We certainly do. I think Rod might have pointed that out, didn't you? Yeah, and I guess I didn't pick it up. So where does that go?
In B1?
Yeah, it goes, see the first sentence, at the end of the first sentence of B1, the proposed language.
This is the one that was in, on the, here.
Such existing structures, and then what gets added in?
Oh.
What Marcy had before is this determination will be done by the building department. So I think that's a good clarification to have in there.
So the motion is to amend to include what I read and what Rob just read that was originally in, that Marcy had prepared that I inadvertently failed to include. Is that clear as mud to everybody?
It wasn't just me, it was like about a ton of people, so, I mean, I want to share the credit, because that was a village that worked to create that. Literally.
I get.
So do we need a motion?
We just amend.
Yes.
Include the language we just discussed.
I will make that motion.
Okay.
Second.
Who's, second?
Susan.
All right, Mr. Bartlett.
Aye.
Mrs. Brown Knight.
Aye.
Ms. Gelbaugh.
Aye.
Dr. Lewis.
Aye.
Mrs. Rankin.
Aye.
And Mr. York.
Aye.
Okay, to amend section 151.085 of the Mariemont Code of Ordinances pertaining to height, yard, and court regulations.
All right, second reading, questions, comments?
I did have a question. Is this the one? Which, I'm trying to follow my notes. Oh, yeah, so I just, this is just for clarity for myself. So it says on number 11, right, where is that? Oh, wait, is this a bunch of them all together? No. Currently reads as follows, minutes read as follows, and, so I'm looking at 11, and it talks about a panhandle shape lot where a narrow strip is less than the full width, blah, blah, blah. Satisfies the minimum street frontage but positions a new or existing residence behind another without direct line of sight of the public street. So that, it's that last part. What does that mean, direct line of sight of any part of the building or the front door? I mean, where, how do you draw the line? I don't know what that is from.
So,
I would.
When you say line of sight, I don't know what that means.
10 exists in the code already, the minimum street frontage of 20 feet.
Yep,
And somehow I used language to try to describe what a panhandle is. So
Yep.
for instance, the lot that's down by the pool on the street.
right.
So,
Because 11 is, because 10 has got one segment, and then there's like another criteria is the panhandle part of it, right?
correct.
And I just, so I didn't know how to, when you say line of sight, without direct line of sight of the public street. So that's direct line of sight from any part of the proposed house in the panhandle, or is it the front door of the panhandle, or?
Yeah, that could be strengthened. I mean, I think, here again, it probably puts onus on the building person, myself, to interpret this one, in terms of defining what panhandle means.
Well, I got the definition of panhandle, it's just like, it's just that line of sight thing. So, because somebody could say, oh, I can see it.
I would interpret this as any overlapping of the two residences is forbidden. So basically, if you have any
Okay.
overlap of these two, that's how I would interpret it to be, not having one in front of the other.
But that
Okay.
house is behind the other one, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, the one at the pool would not
That's why
be,
we created this ordinance.
Yeah. Well, what about the house that's on, yeah,
Yeah, that also would not have been permitted.
Yeah,
Okay.
that was a whole,
Yeah.
a little bit of a reasoning behind creating
I like
this
that.
legislation.
good job.
Yeah, but is there any kind of a setback? I mean, the Mariemont Avenue house as an example, I mean, you know, there's quite a distance between the two houses. So given any distance, they cannot block, one can't block the other, we're
Yes.
saying.
That's what this legislation would propose, yes.
and I guess if somebody wanted to appeal that, they could try to go to the planning commission or
That's
something.
correct. It
and
could
say, hey,
be a variance that, hey, realistically, we're 2 feet overlap. Is that really the intent of this ordinance?
Well, 2 feet over 100 feet apart or something, you know, where, I mean, the distance becomes.
Like anything, it's trying to create a guideline for.
Future.
Yeah,
But there's still some wiggle room if it's not.
And that was the intention of all this legislation, is to, set a boundary, but, have a door, I guess.
Well, in part also, there was a house built, over on East Street that blocked.
Well, yeah. Well, I know that's the originator of this, but again, I want people to realize that Mariemont Avenue would not have been built either, even though we sold the
Well,
paper street.
It might have been, because they might have come for a variance.
Right.
Because of the distance separation.
And I would,
One on East Street, they're touching one another.
Yeah.
No, never allowed that. Yeah. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm just, so, yeah, because they were able to build that house on East Street because of, they met the requirements
Yeah,
of the
because we
setbacks.
didn't have this.
No, but I don't know, but the setbacks, when you're talking about distance apart, they met all those requirements from the setback.
Yeah.
It's just, it's covering the front of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say, Rob, they didn't meet the requirement for front, parallelism. It's not ostensibly parallel, the front of that to the adjacent buildings. So that should have been a variance. I don't know if it was or not. It should-
Okay,
You mean the Mariemont house?
no.
Yeah, the one on East Street.
The one
Oh, the
on,
one on East Street.
Well, the one on Mariemont as well.
No, trust me, we looked at everything, that house on East Street. Yeah.
Are we ready for the next one?
Yes, please.
Yeah, that was helpful. I just wanted to make sure, because that line of sight, I didn't know what that meant in terms of, is it any portion, majority of it, what, I just was trying to make sure I understood where that line gets drawn. So the line gets drawn at the discretion of the building department then?
You can see the literal translation of some of our rules gets us in trouble, so it's gives us more flexibility.
The code of
All right.
ordinances.
To amend section 151.026 of the Mariemont Code of Ordinances pertaining to basic data package.
Questions on this second reading?
Did we do one, this is 06, did we do 025? No, that's next, okay, got it.
To amend section 151.025 of the Mariemont Code of Ordinances pertaining to the powers and duties of the Architectural Review Board.
So, Ed, based on the change that we just made to the other one, that you submitted, 151021,
Right.
I think we need to update this to be consistent with that. Number 9, because now this says, because it's the residence is listed as a contributory, because it doesn't say in here that if now we're saying that the building administrator or the building department says, hey, is this thing gonna harm the property values of any nearby house, right? And it doesn't go to the ARB unless you determine that it does harm
It does,
those.
or if
Or if it's an NIL or some of the other parts.
NHL, which
NHL.
is about 90% of the property. But in
Yeah.
the end, it's still, I find it egregious. It's not just the entire property, but any feature of that property as well.
Yeah. So I'm just. So, but it's not, it feels like it's not consistent. We're saying that, because you're already gonna say if it's a concern with the architectural variances as at variance. Because we've said here that if it's at variance, it needs to cause substantial depreciation of property values, right?
Yeah, that depreciation of property value, I think, is already in our code.
Right, I'm just trying to make them consistent.
Yeah.
That's mine.
But I'm just trying, again,
Yeah.
this is where we sometimes have things that aren't consistent, like we
Right.
just talked about earlier tonight.
I'm not, it doesn't cause me confusion. It's not currently in the law.
Yeah,
I'll leave it at that.
Which one you talking about? I'm confused.
okay. Right, excuse me, down here, wait, down here, this is the one. So, I think it's a clarification where there's concern whether the architectural variance is existing structures and consistent with the language we have in the other, and could cause substantial depreciation of the values.
Okay. So that should go in that, per,
Yeah, just, again, it's a consistency.
well, but could cause substantial. I mean, those are two qualifiers, now that we're talking about it, that I think are vague.
Well, and I heard Rod say he liked having it vague, so he can,
Vague, my determination, and then it goes to the planning commission if it needs to be addressed.
So did you just
ARB.
keep in the substantial, okay, where I'm getting confused is the substantial depreciation or whatever, that was there before?
Yeah.
Okay, because I don't think that what MPF submitted had that.
right.
No,
And again, I agree with you, it's a bit vague, and I think
Well,
Rod,
I'm just,
Rod
won-
likes that.
but I'm just wondering now that we're talking about it, if that kind of contradicts MPF's original intent. You know, because, you know, it was just to give sort of a stopgap measure.
For not only historical properties, but
But, yeah.
vast other, and I think they brought up the house on Mount Vernon as an
Right.
example where they tore down
Right.
something that was on the NHL listing.
And so
Yes.
that would still go to the
And they put
IRB.
in- And they put in a brand new home.
Okay.
It doesn't necessarily meet the character and intent, so that would get that.
All right. I just was working through it in my mind because I didn't want to inadvertently
Sure.
tie.
Garage is the predominant feature.
Yes.
So they would have been forced to figure out a way to put garage in the back like it used to be as well.
Well, or on the side, so it's not front of, right?
That's not the main feature of the house.
So that, I just, to be consistent, I think we should just add that other, the same language that we have in the other part of the.
Did you just come up with that like tonight, or did you ask Ed about that?
No, it was in a previous revision.
Yeah.
It just got lost in that.
Okay.
Okay, so
Ed,
then
is
do
it-
we need a,
Yeah,
Yeah, so it's just using the same language.
so use the same language from 151.021
Correct.
B1.
Yep.
I got it. Joni, I'll send it to you tomorrow, okay?
okay.
Okay.
We need a motion.
A motion to amend? I was so moved.
Second.
Mr. Bartlett?
Aye.
Ms. Brown Knight?
Aye.
Ms. Gilba?
Aye.
Dr. Lois?
Aye.
Mrs. Rankin?
Aye.
Mr. York?
Aye.
All right.
Okay, to amend section 151.087 of the Mariemont Code of Ordinances pertaining to permitted obstructions in required yards and related definitions, section 151.005 regarding hot tub and spa.
All right, second reading, any discussion?
I did have a question, I'm sorry. So is a paved patio different than a paver patio? Because we use those two different words in here.
Well, paved could just be concrete, pavered are pavers, individual streets.
Individual, paver stones.
Okay, because they have, because we use the two different terms, and one has a different setback than the other one was. So I didn't know.
The intent of this is that the setback would be the same, whether or not it's paved surface or paver, as long as it's patio.
But it's different, right? Because one is the paver patios, and that has one setback to it. And then number 4 has a paved patio, and that has a 30-foot setback, which is different than this.
Unfortunately, I don't have it with me, but the 30 is probably related to the sports court. Is that-
Well, it just reads to me as a list. It says any paved patio, terrace, deck used as a sports area, or swimming pool shall be located no closer than 30 feet. So I'm reading that as all 4 of those things have to have a 30-foot setback.
Now, the new ordinance would read, which I don't have it with me, that it's depending on how much above. Let me read this. So, Rob, you're looking at the top here? This is the old one.
So,
So you should be reading, shall be amended as follows down below.
right, and I am. So I look at number
3.
I look at so I'm comparing
But it's
1
used as
versus
a
4.
Sports area or swimming pool.
Well, but you,
It's the use that's different.
right, I see that, but it's also got, got 4 things listed. Paved patio, terrace, deck used as a sports area, or swimming pool. But you're saying it's really only, you're only applying it to the sports area or the swimming pool, or just the sports area only?
I was reading it, maybe Ed, correct me if I'm wrong. I read this, I interpreted this as things that are used as sports areas or swimming pools.
Should be no closer than 30 feet.
Correct.
And I'm totally supportive of that, but when I read that, it sounds like it's a list of 4 things. Paved patio, terrace, deck used as sports area, or, because there's an or, and they're all got commas after them, so.
Oh.
If you're only
okay.
applying it to those 2 things, which I totally agree with, I just think we gotta get that clear.
Can we amend that to clarify that language?
Just put an or in there between terrace or deck used as a sports area. Put another or in there.
The intent of this is to make patios paved patio is more forgiving than our ordinance currently allows, which is quite restrictive.
Yeah.
Which is captured somewhere else, but I read this really is more about swimming pools and sports areas in its entirety than,
So do you take out the paved patio
Just strike
portion,
the-
terrace, and just say all decks used as sports areas or swimming pools should be no
I
closer than
wouldn't
30
even
feet?
eliminate the word deck, I would just, sports areas or swimming pools should not be located 30 feet.
So take out patio, terrace, and deck.
Yeah, because we cover that in the new stuff above.
Okay,
That's good, Bob.
okay. Any sports area or swimming pool should not be located.
Joni, I'll get that to you if you don't have it.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry about being so,
No, it's helpful, I think.
So are you going to move to amend?
I move that we amend it to.
Thank you.
Just strike that word paved patio, terrace, deck, used
Right.
as, and just say any sports area or swimming pool. No closer than 30 feet. Yeah, got it.
Do I have a
Second.
se- do I have a
Second.
Mr. Bartlett?
Aye.
Mrs. Brown Knight?
Aye.
Ms. Gelbaugh?
Aye.
Dr. Lewis?
Aye.
Mrs. Rankin?
Aye.
Mr. York?
Aye.
It's past 8 o'clock. I don't think we're going to do the task list.
That's fine. Can I ask a quick question? though? Where are we on the, getting the bids for tennis courts? Do we know? Is that?
Oh, I talked to
Chris?
about that today. So hopefully we'll get that out. He's out of town for the next couple of days.
Yeah.
So I
Chris
think-
Erdl?
Yeah, I think he comes back Thursday.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is it reasonable to get,
Bill, do it.
Gonna run out of tape.
Do
Right in
it.
is it reasonable to get, how do we get a legal briefing on what we just experienced at 5:30?
Say it again?
Well, I think Ed's going to prepare something.
Yeah,
Are you-
we-
is that-
Prepare some guidance for us.
Perfect, thank you. That was it.
Okay, we're adjourned.
I'll set forth to you guys what the law is, but you still have to make your own determination as to how you want to apply the law.